Wait a second,
What?
old man. I wouldn't be me if I weren't rude. Can we do better than that? Welcome to the Hot List presented by Dick's Sporting Goods and Golf Galaxy. We're talking drivers.
And the drivers we're talking about today are not any old drivers. They're the drivers specifically for your game. We're going to talk about the technologies that allow the manufacturers to kind of dial that in.
I think what we've seen with this year's crop of drivers is this idea of customization, specialization, no compromise. In other words, not getting a driver that only works for all people in a limited way. These are drivers that are specifically made for your skill set. And that may be, I want forgiveness all the time. That may be, I need something that kills spin no matter what.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of options to do that, as you can see from just what we have on the desk here. I mean, you take the Callaway Maverick series, for example. I mean, they have a max forgiveness driver. They have a standard version that'll fit a lot of folks. And then they have their Sub-Zero version, which will just absolutely kill spin no matter how bad someone kind of gets it out there.
No, exactly. TaylorMade obviously has 3 drivers. With the Sim series, you've got the most adjustable driver in our lineup. The Sim Max driver is kind of the opposite of that. It's still adjustable, but doesn't have the movable weight that the Sim driver has. So you've got, again, a forgiveness-focused driver and an adjustable driver with forgiveness. All 3 of those drivers emphasize aerodynamics. Certainly the Titleist family of drivers runs the gamut from a lighter weight driver to a more forgiving driver to a super spin killing, low launching tour driver that someone like Adam Scott would be perfectly made for. I think sometimes we make this more complicated than it actually is. Something that most golfers talk about is, I want a driver that is forgiving. How would I know that a driver is forgiving? Well, one of the easy ways is to just look at the driver. Another easy way is to look at its name. So you look at what Cobra's done with the King Speed Zone. You have the standard King Speed Zone, and then you have the King Speed Zone Extreme.
Anything named Extreme is going to be definitely something that's going to help you out. And like Mike said, you can just look at the driver, the size of it, front to back, but also look at the size of the face. You know, a big face is usually a sign that you can hit it on a wide swath of that and get a fairly decent result.
And I will say this, obviously face technology has come a long way. Just in the last 5 years, I know for a fact that manufacturers were talking about essentially the hot area of the face being about the size of a dime. Today, that hot area of the face, basically the area of the face that's really fast, is now the size of a quarter.
And if you don't think that sounds like a lot, next time you're out hitting, really take a look at the face of your driver and the impact points on it. Yeah, you'll hit some outside of that area of a quarter, but you're going to hit an awful lot of them within that spot. You're not going to hit very many within a dime. So you're really able to take advantage of that technology.
Or you could just say, how many things can you buy with a dime today? That would be an indication that a dime's really not that helpful anymore.
I mean, we should put some of these to the test. I think many golfers struggle with high spin. So, you know, I talked earlier about, you know, the Callaway's driver, the Maverick, and the Maverick Sub-Zero. And the Sub-Zero really helps kill spin by center of gravity movement. Basically, they're moving the center of gravity closer to the face. That's going to get the ball usually going a little lower, a little less spin, and we should be able to see that.
Wait a second,
What?
old man. We got a few more episodes to go
old
through,
man?
and we need maybe a little young blood in this situation.
Okay, you're
right.
being replaced then, right?
I'm not volunteering, but I think Greg is our man who might generate a little bit of club head speed without going into traction, say, might be an issue for you.
We're good with
Greg,
that.
help us out here, please.
No problem.
So we're
All
starting.
right, so we're starting with the standard version here. So, you know, Greg's a big, strong boy, so he's going to bring some club head speed here, and we should be able to see some noticeable differences between the 2 clubs. And hopefully not ruining our simulator at the same time.
Ball go far.
That's a big boy hit right there. 284 yards, very nice. Backspin, 2693. decent, not super low, but not super high either. So why don't you give the low spin version a shot and see what we get.
And again, when you look at these drivers, obviously they're adjustable for loft, they're adjustable for lie angle as well, face angle as well. The Maverick Sub-Zero has movable weights front and back, so there's actually a heavier weight that you can put to the front, and that should lower the spin even more than having the heavier weight at the back. So you should see a slightly lower flight.
Even though he cut it, we'll see
What?
what the spin does. 277 in the distance, 2658 RPMs. Greg, hit one more. You hit a little bit of a cut. That probably added to that backspin number a little bit.
And I think this is another illustration. Obviously, when you're going through a fitting, you don't want to look for that one shot to base your decision on. You want to kind of look at an average grouping of shots and take the driver that gives you the best average, the most consistent hit.
Yeah, I think Mike made a very important point on fitting there. Too many golfers, they get enthralled in the cage or with a launch monitor, and they end up saying, hey, I hit that one shot 8 yards further than anything else. Don't fall into that trap. You want to find what's a typical hit for you and then compare your clubs based on your typical hit, not your Sunday punch. That one there, we see Greg brought it down to 2,251 RPMs. That's about 400 RPMs less than the standard version. A big boy like him may not need that, but someone like me very well might.
Yeah, exactly. When we're talking about low spin drivers, the tendency is to think that, oh, well, that's only for a tour player. And I think, again, we want to emphasize that you want to be open-minded in this whole process, because you, as a high slice, high spin player, might want to explore the possibility of a low spin driver because it's a good way to knock off spin. Instead of, for instance, feeling like, well, I've just got to get the lowest loft possible to knock off spin. If I have a low spin driver, I can play maybe a little higher loft, so I'm going to launch it higher, but not as much spin as I've been doing, and it might be a more playable alternative for you, even though you're not necessarily, quote, a low spin driver player or a tour level type player. So again, expand the mind. There's opportunities to get better that are outside what you think normally.
And Greg, I apologize for my rude partner. Thank you very much for helping us out there.
I wouldn't be me if I weren't rude.
That's true. Hey, but part of what we see with all of this though is, there may be low spin driver, max forgiveness driver, drivers that give you high launch. But one thing all these drivers do is bring plenty of heat with them. The face designs are really impressive. They're getting super thin. You're coming with a really big trampoline now. All of them are butting up against the USGA limit for spring-like effect. And sometimes if you're Xander Schauffele or some of the other players on the PGA Tour, maybe a little bit over that limit accidentally.
Yeah, it's a very complicated idea, but essentially what's happening is that driver faces are getting so thin, so close to the limit, that there is a tendency for some of them over time to get closer and closer to that limit and maybe over that limit. Like Mike said, the idea with manufacturing and design is to get as close to the rules as possible, but still stay within the rules. When we do the hot list at Golf Digest, we bring in the USGA to do performance testing for us in terms of CT, what's known as characteristic time, which is spring-like effect. And we occasionally find drivers that are over the limit. We find drivers that are very close to the limit, but we wanted to talk about what it means to be, quote, non-conforming. These are not drivers that are trying to be non-conforming.
Right.
These are drivers that are trying to be at the limit and get just a little bit over. And what does that mean in terms of performance? Is it really that much of an advantage to have a non-conforming driver? I think what we should see with an average player is
very average.
probably more informative than what we'd see with a tour player.
So what we're going to do is we have got two drivers here, one of them conforming, one of them non-conforming. We have hid as best we can the names to protect the innocent, because as we were saying, no one goes out with the intent of making a non-conforming driver. I know some people think they do. I can guarantee you not a single manufacturer sets out to make a non-conforming driver.
So before you get here, as it turns out, we actually have a question from a reader that kind of fits right into this discussion. This is from Countdown Dave, and excuse the reading glasses, but this is the most complicated question I've ever seen. Do you foresee the big manufacturers increasing the safety band on face conformance in reaction to the new driver testing initiation announced by the PGA Tour? Can we do better than that, Dave? Can we somehow approach the English language and simplify the discussion?
Well, Dave's not a professional writer like we are, so what Dave's trying to say is actually a very good question. He's saying with all this talk about hot drivers and tour spicy drivers and drivers that maybe are over the limit, you know, are the manufacturers actually going to throttle back for fear of going over that limit? And the answer is no, and there's a very good reason why the answer is no. It's kind of akin to you going out and driving your car. You know the speed limit's 65 miles an hour. You know if you go over that speed limit a couple miles per hour, you're not going to get caught speeding. And that's kind of the thought here, is there's really no penalty for making an unintentional hot driver that's 1 or 2 points over the limit. On the tour, it's just going to be, we'll take your driver away before you put it in play, and you have to play with your backup. So no one's going to throttle way back and give up yards. The other reason, though, is the difference really shouldn't be that big. So if you take a look at the numbers here, you know, the last one I hit went 225 yards, a total distance of 241 with a conforming head, and now we're going to hit one with a non-conforming head, and the guess is it may be a few yards, maybe, and it's not always even that.
And I think there's another reason why manufacturers are not going to throttle back, and it's that launch monitor right there. We got the GC Quad from Foresight Sports that is giving us all this data, and that's in a lot of golf shops across the country. It's how fitting is done. You're not going to give up speed when you're trying to sell drivers, and I think that's why manufacturers are going to continue to push wherever they can.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't terribly different, and you know, the conforming driver went further. I mean, if it was really that big a deal, you would see distance increases on every type of shot, and we just don't see that here, and I don't think you will ever see that. The difference between a driver just under the limit, just over the limit can literally be measured in feet, not yards.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of manufacturing, probably getting tighter in how manufacturing is done. I think that's one of the intents about the USGA's rule and the PGA Tour's increased testing is like, hey guys, we're watching you a little bit more closely than we have. Let's keep this thing maybe under wraps a little bit so that everybody's playing on an even playing field.
Yeah, and I think at their base, everyone wants to play within the rules. I don't know anyone that I play golf with, you play golf with, anyone on tour wants to play outside the rules, so this is a good way to make sure everyone is. But I also think everyone understands from a performance standpoint, just not that big a deal.
And I think the bigger deal is if you're looking to get more yards, it's not going to be from purchasing a non-conforming driver.
It's going to be from getting fit.
Getting fit, getting the right driver for you. And I think that's what we're trying to do with these little instructional episodes here. We're trying to get you in a position to embrace finding the right driver through a proper fitting.
Till next time.